My name's Adam Hart.
We
Welcome.
usually use Zoom.
So can everybody hear me all right? It's okay? Good? All right.
Sometimes.
So I'm honored to have been invited by the Association of Lifelong Learners to give a presentation about my time living abroad and my travels and stuff like that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about human connection and stuff like that that you would see in as you're traveling and stuff like that. So this is me. This is a picture. I was just recently traveling in Europe a couple months ago, and this is in Athens. I don't know if you can see, but here's the Parthenon right here. So really, really nice, really nice. So before we begin, this is, of course, a lot of this is about traveling. So I kind of want you to just I want you to kind of think a little bit as we're doing this. Think about travel. Maybe you have done some, maybe you haven't done some, but just kind of think about it. So speaking of that, here's a little bit of food for thought. So this is an excellent quote that I got from Mark Twain that I've seen before. So it says, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." So he's definitely using kind of some big words, but what it means is, I'm sure you can figure this out, if you sit around in the same, maybe you've never left your hometown or something, if you do that, that's okay, but you might have a smaller view of what the bigger world is, right? So when you get out there, obviously it's going to open your mind up because you're going to be seeing new things. You might learn how to accept new things and stuff like this. So there's a little travel quote for you to think about. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised here in Alpena. I lived in Montana for 10 years. And then most recently, I lived in East Asia for 12 years. So I lived in Taiwan for 6.5, in China for 5 years, and I just got back from China this summer. So I left my job there, and I'm taking a little time off right now. I've been teaching for a little over 11 years. I have a bachelor's in anthropology, and I have a master's in education with a focus on educational technology. I'm very, very into teaching technology. That's what my position was at the international school in China where I was teaching. Very passionate about that. And I've been to more than 33 countries. I think the count is 33 right now. And I have no desire to stop traveling. I'm more addicted than ever. I want to get to 40 and then 50 and then 60 countries. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. Okay, so before we begin, I want to just talk briefly about my two heroes and the two biggest influences of my life, who essentially kind of influenced my desire to travel and my desire to experience as much as I can in life. So the man on the left, maybe some of you know this guy, Jack Kerouac. He was he's from the Beat generation. Some of you might remember that from back in the late 40s and 50s. And then the man on the right is Anthony Bourdain, who's like really, really, really my hero. And we'll talk a little bit more about these guys in a sec, and then we'll move on to some of my stuff. Okay? So Jack Kerouac is an author and a poet. He wrote On the Road. Maybe some of you have read it. He was one of the most important voices of the Beat generation, an avid traveler. He was constantly seeking truth. He was into Buddhism for a while. He was always just trying to experience stuff and find the real truth that exists out in the world. So he inspired me to travel and seek out new experiences, and he also taught me to think outside the box, because the Beat generation were very outside the box movement in literature. Anthony Bourdain, so he's a chef and author. Maybe some of you have seen some of his shows. He has several shows, the most recent Parts Unknown. And he was always looking for authentic local experiences, often related to food because he was a chef. So that's where a lot of my inspiration comes, like his style of traveling. He wants to get there and see the real stuff. He wants to connect with real people. And that's what I like. So he's my main travel and food inspiration. I'm a big foodie as well, by the way. I love finding food as I travel. So here he is again, and he has lots of great travel quotes. And you can see him there in Vietnam. He is sitting on a short plastic stool, which you will find later as one of my tips how to find a good restaurant when you're in Southeast Asia. Look for the little stools. Anyway, this is his quote. It says, "Travel isn't always pretty. It isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts. It even breaks your heart, but that's okay. The journey changes you. It should change you. It leaves marks on your memory, on your consciousness, on your heart, and on your body. You take something with you. Hopefully you leave something good behind." So I try to keep this in mind when I travel, and definitely that last part, leaving something good behind, I definitely urge you to try to leave a positive impact wherever you go. Okay, so very quickly, my interest in traveling abroad. So mostly after university graduation, I had some free time. I was kind of like, well, I can, maybe go somewhere for a month or 2 months. So I wanted to go to Africa. I had a friend who was in the Peace Corps there. I was really set on that, but then in the end, I decided to go to Costa Rica with another friend. And I'd been there many, many times, and then teaching English abroad, I kind of figured that was the best way to see the world. So then I got a TEFL certification. TEFL means teaching English as a foreign language. And then after that, I moved to Taiwan to teach English as a foreign language. And then also my sister Stephanie, who's here with us on WebEx, her trips to Thailand and Cambodia were quite influential on me as well. So once I saw that kind of stuff, then I was really, really interested in Southeast Asia. Okay, so let's just have a brief talk about my decision to move to Taiwan. So the title of my presentation is Leap of Faith. And the reason I say it's a leap of faith because it was really a leap of faith. I was going to Taiwan. I did not have a job. I didn't know anybody yet. I'll tell you about that in a second. But so once I told my family I was going, my mom and dad are looking at each other. Are you serious? You're going there without a job? This is crazy. What are you thinking? But I was like, it's time for a change. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take a leap of faith and try something new. So anyway, my mom, as it turns out, after all of this fear and anxiety that my parents probably had, my mom, by chance, met someone at a church function. And as it happened, her son was living in Taiwan teaching. And he had been to Costa Rica, and we're about the same age, and a lot of connections. So now, all of a sudden, my parents are feeling better about this, especially knowing that I'll have a connection over there. So anyway, that connection was my friend Jonathan, who is the son of this woman that my mother met. And then Jonathan really just took me under his wing when I went there and gave me a place to stay. He had an extra scooter for me to borrow and got me a cell phone, waited till I got me an apartment, and then said, okay, I've set you up enough. And so that was a huge resource for me. So that's a really a precious story that my family has about that, how they came across that. But anyway, that's what it kind of was. It was a leap of faith. Now, for some strange reason, I don't know why, but I didn't really do much research. I didn't even learn how to say hello or thank you in Mandarin. It was weird, because when I went to Costa Rica, I had a whole I'm learning some Spanish, and I just showed up. So it was quite a leap of faith, but it paid off in the end, in my opinion. Okay, so let's talk briefly about my time living abroad. So we just talked about my decision to move to Taiwan. And these two pictures here, this one, I don't know if you can see this laser. Anyway, the one on the top is Taipei, the capital of Taiwan. And the one on the bottom right is the famous skyline in Shanghai. So anyway, of course, as you can guess, I've met many, many people from many countries over the years. A lot of times that turns into a place I can stay in a country, as it did recently. But you can see here, making connections with Taiwan, it says Petra, John, and the expat community. John is the guy that I just told you about, the son that, of the woman my mother met. And Petra is a Dutch girl. So when I arrived in Taiwan, she was traveling as well, extensively for a year. She was traveling for a year and a half. It was amazing. So I met her, really cool girl. We stayed in touch. In fact, she came back to Taiwan and stayed with me. Most recently, I was in Holland, and I was able to stay with her. She lives not far outside of Amsterdam. So it's pretty crazy the connections you make and how you might come back to, you see these people later in life when you don't expect it. It's wonderful. In the expat community, John introduced me to about 15 or 20 expats in one day at a party. People from all over Spain and, I mean, Spain and Ireland and Australia, all this stuff. Anyway, and then making connections in China, my best friend Woody there, and a good friend of mine, Chris. So you can see that the idea here is just, it's really easy to make connections. I mean, I guess if you're a little outgoing and friendly and it's easy for you to talk to people, it's pretty easy to make connections. So yeah, anyway, so that's a little bit about this. So now it's time, I wanted to go through and show you some images from my time in Taiwan and China, because maybe some of you have never seen any of this stuff, and it's quite interesting. So I chose this one first for Taiwan. Oh, sorry, by the way, I want to mention, if anyone has any questions, like we don't have to wait to the end. Maybe if you see something.
It does say switch audio on that more options list.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, but that's for us.
Is this on there? Oh, okay, okay. Okay. Anyway, sorry, lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so guys, feel free. You don't have to wait till the end. If you see something about this, if you see something, the picture you want to know about or ask about, feel free to raise your hands. And if I don't see you, just say, Adam, I'm over here. So yeah, so please feel free. So this is a typical day in Taiwan. It's scooters everywhere. It's madness. Everyone's driving everywhere. People don't follow traffic rules. It's wild, but it's amazing. So you can see there's like all of these kind of signs everywhere. It's very colorful and just kind of in your face.
From our iPhone.
Yeah, we should be able to mute them. This one here. Yeah. Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay, all right, yep, so that's just like a typical image of Taiwan. And here's another one as well, people on scooters. So now, one of my favorite things about Taiwan, the night markets. The night markets are amazing. You can find all sorts of different food. This is one of the biggest night markets in the city where I was living. When I took my family here, they were not as interested in the food as I am, but they gave it a try. I definitely remember my brother, who's quite picky. I definitely remember him like not being very excited about some of the smells that he was smelling there. There's something famous in there's a famous food in Taiwan called stinky tofu, and it's really stinky. You'll see later. I have an image for you. Okay, now this is basically my favorite. Probably my favorite thing to do in life is just scootering around in the mountains. This is on one of my favorite roads where I drive up to a magnificent view of the mountains. And Taiwan is maybe 70% mountains, so it's just absolutely beautiful there. Absolutely beautiful. So some mountain pictures here. Some more. This picture on the left is actually the mountain view that you can see when you're going up scootering. And the picture on the right is from my favorite trail, hiking trail. This little guy on the left, we see these little lizards everywhere, all over the place, running around. And the place on the right is in the southern part of Taiwan, where just one of my favorite places to travel around. Okay, so this food on the left is called dan bing. It basically translates to egg pancake. So you can fill that stuff. It's kind of almost like a tortilla down and then like an egg on top, and then you can put in bacon or ham or tuna or whatever. But that's my favorite Taiwanese breakfast food. I love it. I can't wait to have it again. It's really good. And then on the right is just one of the really nice hiking trails that they have. The city I was living in, there are 10 hiking trails within 30 minutes, so it's a hiker's paradise. It's perfect. All right, and a little bit more about the food. So the place on the left is one of my favorite restaurants. It just happened to be a couple doors down from my apartment. And on the right is the famous stinky tofu. I have a feeling that anyone in here that smelled it for the first time would not be excited about it. I had to try it 3 different times before I accepted it. And now, believe it or not, I love it. Believe it or not, I love it. But I had to try 3 times before I gave in. And then this on the left is one of my favorite soups, some radish soup and some fruit at the market. This right here is lychee. This is one of my favorite kind of fruits. So down in like Taiwan and southern China, you can find that lychee a lot. And then, of course, there was one time when I was lucky enough to have my family come out to Taiwan and join me. So on the right side, you can see there's my mom, dad, brother, and sister. And on the left is me with my class that I was teaching. And you can see the family in the background as well. So that was a lot of fun. They came the day after Christmas one year, and we had a Christmas holiday together in Taiwan. It was magical. Okay, so let's move on to some pictures about China. Can't start some pictures about China without a picture of a panda, right? So in one of my favorite places in China is a place called Chengdu, and that's the place that's famous for the pandas. They have a rehabilitation center there. That's where I am on the left, at the rehabilitation center. Anyway, Chengdu is in Sichuan province, which is where it's some of the most famous Chinese cuisine, the really spicy stuff. Most of you probably know the word as Szechuan. People say Szechuan chicken. It's actually pronounced Sichuan. So that's the province there. It's known for its spicy food. But this on the right is a place called Duzhangyan. It's like where two rivers converge, and they built an irrigation system there 2,500 years ago. So that place is really, really cool. And then here, of course, we have the Forbidden City, the most famous thing in Beijing, and then one of the lions on the right. And then this, again, is the famous Shanghai skyline, one of my favorite cities in the world. And then the right is from Shanghai as well, and the left is from Xi'an. Do any of you know about the Terracotta Army? Have any of you heard about that? So the Terracotta Army is there in that city, Xi'an, Xian. And Xi'an, I didn't realize either until I went there, is a big food city. So like really, really amazing food there. But I'll just give you a brief story about when I went there the first time to see the Terracotta Army. So that's a big bucket list thing. I went there and I lived in China for the entirety of the COVID years. So it was pretty crazy. I didn't leave China for 3 years. And I don't know if any of you know this, but they were really out there with their policies and stuff. Really strict. But anyway, so basically if like 6 people get COVID, they're going to lock down a whole neighborhood, right? Something like this. Anyway, so the first time I went to Terracotta Army, there's thousands of people around, and they had closed it because they had one COVID case inside. So they closed it, right? So the first time I went, I couldn't even see the Terracotta Army because of kind of ridiculous COVID policies. But fortunately, I did go back 2 years later, and at that time, the COVID policy worked out for me, because everyone was kind of scared to go out. So when I went there, there were only about 200 people instead of like 5,000 like you normally have. So I actually walked around the Terracotta Army place twice, because why not, you know? When I probably would never see it again. I have it almost to myself. So in the end, the COVID policy worked out for that one. Okay, the left, this is, so the birthplace of Taoism. I don't know if you guys have heard of Taoism. Some people might say Tao, T-A-O. That's here. This one on the left is actually where it started. That was one of my favorite places in China. Really beautiful. And then on the right is one of the most famous Chinese dishes, mapo tofu. That is insanely spicy. I think I only took about 5 bites, and the last 3 were because I was like, I should just do it because this is the real deal, you know. But I was seriously shaking my head. How could anybody even like this? Like, it was insanely spicy. But believe it or not, after I left Sichuan province, after all the spice, and after all like my lips tingling, I started craving it after a while. Believe it or not, I started craving that heat after a while. Here's a picture of just like a regular picture of Shanghai. And then this is old Shanghai here. So that's a pretty interesting area with daily life kind of stuff. This was in Chengdu. This was really, really beautiful. I'm not sure the name of that. This is another one in Yunnan province in the southwest. That's my favorite province in China. It's really beautiful. It's down near Thailand and Myanmar. Okay, here we go. This I'm excited to talk about because this was one of my favorite things I had seen in China. So in the north of China, there's a city called Harbin, and it's really cold. Actually, believe it or not, it's on the 45th parallel. I found out. It's really cool. So you can imagine how cold it can be. At this time, I think it was like 0 outside. But anyway, there's a river nearby, and they harvest these blocks of ice, like this big, as bricks. And they build these magnificent structures every single year. It's like a small town. It's incredible. It's incredible. So I had to throw this in. And here's another image as well. Just like the U.S., China is massive. So the landscapes, I mean, it's just same as U.S. They've got some desert, they've got some rainforest up north, stuff like this. They've got all sorts of stuff. So these are the Rainbow Mountains up near the Gobi Desert. And here are some of my favorite dishes from Xi'an, the place at the Terracotta Army. So the left are hand-pulled noodles that they make, and the right is actually one of the best soups I ever had. So this one on the right was at the Muslim night market in Xi'an. It's really famous. And it's at like a lamb, it's like a lamb kind of lamb and like little chunks of bread and stuff, but excellent stuff. I always like to show food to people to hopefully expose them and get them, you know, trying some stuff. Okay, and then the very famous soup dumplings from Shanghai. So inside, like once the meat cooks inside, it actually creates like a soup. So those are just incredible, but really, really famous in China. And then, so when I travel, I always look for the most authentic experiences I can and try to find all of the best local food. And I don't even remember how I found out about this, but I found that this restaurant that was about 100 years old that was famous in Shanghai that makes this really, really, really incredible food. And this is some of the best stuff I had. So this is like, the bottom left is like a sesame noodles, and the one right is like a pork cutlet, stuff like this. Okay, so this is in the south. This is also near in Yunnan, kind of near down near Myanmar, which is Burma. I'm not sure if you guys know Myanmar. And then this is, I think this is the last one. This is Yangshuo. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen anything on maybe National Geographic about China where they might be using those cormorant birds for fishing. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's this place, this area. But they have these karst mountains. I don't know if you know what karst mountains are, but it's similar to like sinkholes where the stone will erode. So really magnificent landscapes. And then this is also in Yunnan province. So in the west, Tibet is in the west, so you get a lot of Tibetan influence. And then on the right is Tiger Leaping Gorge, and the left is Jade Dragon Snow Mountain. That mountain, I think, is about 18,000 feet. It's pretty crazy. I was losing my breath as I was hiking up that thing. So anyway, so that is, I just wanted to give some images of Taiwan and China, give you guys an idea of kind of the diverse thing. Yes?
With your food, did you try Peking duck?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Actually, I had an image I was going to put in here, and I forgot about it. I'm glad you asked that because one of the best meals I ever had in my life was in Beijing, and it was the Peking duck. And you get the Peking duck and they give you these kind of little rice wraps, almost like a tortilla, and you throw some cucumber and a little bit of like sweet sauce, and it's really nice. Really nice. Do you like it? Yeah, right. Oh, sorry, hang on, let me see if I can. Can I just click X on this? Cool. Okay. All right. Any more questions before we move on?
Does the China-Taiwanese political thing have any impact on your ability to travel, or?
Well, I mean, not necessarily, but like, for example, so like my Chinese friends who want to go to Taiwan, they can't because they just, it's kind of tit for tat stuff between them, and Taiwan's not trying to do anything, but it's a touchy subject, and like my friends want to go, but they can't. My Chinese friends want to go, but they can't because Taiwan's like, stop messing with us, so they impose that. I'm actually heading back to Taiwan next month. I used to be able to get a Chinese visa in Taiwan. Now I can't. So that stuff is real. And for me, it's particularly sensitive. Moving to China was not the easiest decision because my heart is in Taiwan. So that's a big thing. And being in China, it's hard, when you have that kind of thing to deal with. So anyway, yeah, it can be, but for me personally, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect us. But those nationalities would have problems with their stuff.
Were you more comfortable in Taiwan
Yes.
with safety than in China?
Well, actually, Taiwan and China are two of the safest countries in the world. They're both extremely safe. We all know about China and what it is and that kind of stuff. In terms of crime, there's like almost nothing. So, well, I don't want to say that. There might be like cyber crime and stuff like that, but yeah, I prefer Taiwan much more. China's big and beautiful, but Taiwan is nice. The different political systems, obviously for us, it would be easier to navigate the Taiwanese system instead, but yeah.
Are the cities like really clean? I heard something like, is that?
So where I was living in Shenzhen, in the southern part, that's like China's example city of the future. That's like a miracle. Shenzhen 40 years ago was like a series of fishing villages, and now it's more than 18 million people. It's like, I think the fastest growing city in the world, maybe something like this. But sorry, what was the question again?
Pollution. I've heard they're like super.
Okay, so I was lucky with Shenzhen. So before I moved there, they had this initiative to make all of the buses and taxis and most of the cars electric. So Shenzhen is very low pollution. But I've been to Chengdu, Shanghai, Beijing. Actually, the time I went to Beijing, I was really lucky. There was no pollution. I couldn't believe it. I got really lucky. But that's the thing. It's like a crapshoot. Will there be it or not? But where I was living, I was really lucky, and there's almost no pollution. It's really nice.
Our son has done business in Chengdu.
Oh, really?
He was over there for
Lovely city. Lovely city.
on a business deal that he works with and for. There's a lot of work that's being done over there.
Oh, yeah.
Food processing, I mean.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. Nice. Yeah.
As a teacher, what topics were you more sensitive to and avoided?
Well, of course, when I was in China, in my employee handbook, it says anything political, you cannot. You can get in serious trouble. In China, you really have to watch what you say. You cannot speak freely about certain things. But that kind of thing, it's just, I think in general as a teacher anyway, I think it's best, I think you would kind of know what you might talk about and whatnot, but there definitely, you have to be very careful. So there was one time where I was talking to them and I said, on the first day I'm introducing myself every year to my classes, right? And I say, I love Taiwan. It's such a beautiful it's such a beautiful place. You guys should really go there someday. So I do not want to be caught saying Taiwan's a country in China. I could get in serious trouble for that. So like that's a thing where like I had to like stop myself in the middle of what I was saying, but I mean, but it's fine, you know, just don't talk about it, don't say it, and you know, but it's just interesting for us to think about it because we can, because of our freedom of speech rights, you know.
What language did you speak over there?
English mostly. So they speak Mandarin, they speak Chinese, but in both Taiwan and China, I was in environments that were mostly, I mean, people spoke English mostly. So I lived in a district where there were a lot of expats living there. And, you know, so of course, all the people working in that area will know some English and stuff like that. I hate to say it, but after being in Chinese-speaking countries for 12 years, my Chinese is horrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. But in my defense, I mean, learning Chinese is like doing complex math or something. You have to open up another part of your brain. It's crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, the environments where I'm at, it's mostly English-speaking. So in my school, it's all English-speaking. So. Yeah, they're like very strict English speaking. They could only speak Chinese during lunch and recess. So, yeah, Marie?
Adam, could you just describe what it's like to be on a high-speed train?
Yeah, so high-speed trains are amazing. I still have no idea why America is not doing anything about it, but yeah, I mean, high-speed trains, they go, let's see, what's 200? Must be, I mean, they go, I think, 130, 140, 150, sometimes 180 miles an hour. So you could go, so in Taiwan, which is quite small, you can go from Taipei all the way in the north, almost all the way to the south in, I think, an hour and 40 minutes, something like this, which normally would take about 10 hours to drive. So the high-speed trains, I mean, even in China, I could take one from Shenzhen all the way to Shanghai. I mean, you wouldn't do that, but you could do it in 12 hours, and Shanghai is far in the north. So the high-speed trains are incredible, yeah.
The currency, what did you use for currency?
So it's called, the currency in China is called RMB. It's short for renminbi. And it's right now, I think the exchange rate is like 7.25 per $1 US. So if I'm in China and it's like 20, we say kwai. Kwai is like bucks. So if it's 20 kwai, it'd be like $3. So you just, that's one thing when I live abroad, I'm constantly making conversions in my head. And now, I mean, honestly, I'm like, what is this Fahrenheit? This Fahrenheit is so stupid. Like, what is this feet and inches? That doesn't make any sense. The metric system is much better, you know? So I get used to that and I'm constantly converting all the time. And as you can guess, when I'm converting money in some country, you always are thinking about dollars first. I mean, it's natural. That's your first currency. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. There's always conversions going on in your head.
Yeah. For those of us that do travel or thinking about traveling, are you seeing a change in the use of cash in China?
Yeah, I am. Actually, China, almost no one uses cash. So in China, they have kind of like a super app called WeChat. It's similar to like Messenger and Line and Instagram. It's all that rolled into one, but they have something called WeChat Pay, and you can link it to your bank account, and it's a QR code. So when I go in, they say, "Oh, it's $20." I just hold my QR code and they scan it. That's it. So that's another thing. You know, I was saying, what is this? What's this silly non-metric system stuff? For me, when I actually have to use paper money or carry a wallet, I'm like, what is it? What is this ridiculous wallet thing? You know, because you don't. And actually, it was kind of crazy because last year I'm so used to just always using money with my phone. Whenever I used to travel, I would take cash, of course, with me, at least like $300, $400, $500. But I just kind of stopped doing that because I live in China, right? I'm using my phone. And last year I went to Korea, I went to Seoul, and I needed to get a taxi. I'm in the airport, I needed to get a taxi, and I'm looking at it. Oh my gosh, I have no cash. Like zero, nothing, no Chinese or American money I can change. So like, no problem, I'll try the ATM. Well, the ATM machine didn't work. I said, your card doesn't work. So then I'm like, I can't even get it, which is like, that's a super amateur mistake, you know what I mean? But you just get used to that. So when I actually have to use paper money, you know, it's kind of inconvenient. But whatever, you know.
Oh, Mom.
What's that?
Well, you know, we had a program with Rocky Rowland, and he talked about money and banking, and he said the key word was trust.
Yeah.
And what you're telling me is I'd have to have a lot of trust
Yeah.
in that system.
Exactly. No, that system is, I love it. I mean, I would guess we might move to that eventually, but I don't know. We'll see. Any other questions before we move on, guys? Dave?
You're in Korea. What did you end up doing?
Eating a lot of amazing Korean food.
I mean,
Oh no. So I just, there were several different kinds of ATMs. So I just tried a couple different ones. It's just, of course, when that happens, yeah, just try another one. But you know, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna have money. Like you don't think of the simple thing. Hey, it's okay. There's probably different companies. So in the end, I found another one and was able to go. So, but if that happened, I could, get some help somehow. So, I have needed to get money wired to me in a pinch before. Do you remember the one with Baga? Yeah, there was one time in Cambodia where I ran out of money, and that was quite an interesting. Somebody brought me some money, and it was. I arrived in the capital of Cambodia, and someone arrived at my hotel and just gave me money. It was really interesting. It was gangster connections, actually. The guy I knew in Taiwan, he knew a gangster in Taiwan, and he knew a gangster, and they brought me like 7 crisp $100 bills. It was crazy. It was amazing. Yeah.
You didn't tell us that.
Oh, I didn't? Oh, okay. About that, yeah. It wasn't sketchy though. It's just like gambling gangsters, not yeah. Mike?
any interaction with the U.S. embassies in any of the countries?
The only interaction I had, it's actually not an official U.S. embassy, but in Taiwan they have what's called the American Institute in Taipei. I had to send my, I needed to renew my passport, so I had to send it there. That's basically like an embassy, but it's an unofficial embassy. Any other questions? Everyone good? Okay. How are we doing on time? I just want to make sure I'm not like, okay, good, still have some time.
Cheers, Alice.
Okay, so I'll just talk briefly about my interest in travels and then show a few more pics and stuff like that, and then kind of talk about some things I've taken away from my travels. So when I was 19, I started my travels without family, First one was with friends, and then Montana later in that summer, and then I ended up moving to Montana. When I was 21 years old, I had a friend, he was in the Army, and I went to pick him up in Louisiana, and we drove all around the U.S. Must have been, I don't know, 18 states, I don't know, a lot of states, and a lot of national parks and stuff like that. So that trip kind of, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I think that trip kind of is the one that made me kind of be like, let's go big, let's go to Europe for 6 weeks instead of a week or something like that. So that trip, yeah, that was fun. It was about 2 months we were driving around the U.S. And then aside from Canada, my first place abroad was Costa Rica. So after I graduated from University of Montana, I don't know if you remember, but I was kind of interested in going to Africa, and then I decided on Costa Rica. I had a friend there. And I thought, well, if I go for 3 weeks, why not go for 3 months? I just graduated. I have nothing right now that I need to do. So that's the thing is, like, I'm kind of, I don't want to sound corny or anything, but I'm kind of like a go big or go home. Like, well, if 3 weeks, why not a month? Well, if it's a month, why, so I kind of think in that way. And then, of course, then Taiwan and beyond, all of this stuff that I've seen since then.
I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
When you were in Costa Rica, I understand it's expensive to live there.
Now it's gotten a lot more expensive in the last 10 years. Crazy. It used to be quite cheap. I'd been away for 8 years, and the last time I went back, the prices were up like 40% or something. It was crazy. So yeah, like before the dream of retiring in Costa Rica, it's one of the most expensive countries in Latin America right now. So Amazing place, but it's definitely not as cheap as it used to be. Yep, and then, of course, we mentioned this before, making connections through the travels. And then, so my original plan when I went to China was do at least 2 years, save some money, hopefully do 4 years. And then I finished 4 and I said, okay, why not? After I finished 4 and they were trying to get me to sign another contract, the borders were still closed for COVID. So I said, if the borders aren't open, I can't do it. And then they opened and I stayed on for another year. So by doing that, I was able to save up a little more. And I was like, well, I could go to Europe for a couple weeks or I could go to Europe for 6 weeks, like that same kind of thinking. So I actually just recently went there in September and October. And the connections, so these 3 people here, so Dulcineo, this guy here in Portugal, he was one of my former colleagues in China, and he got locked out. When China locked their borders, he was outside, so he got locked out. So he just moved back to Portugal. And then Ruben is a guy from Spain I know, and he was at that first, my friend John that introduced me to all these guys. Ruben was one of those people. And then Petra, the Dutch girl I was telling you about. So I went and saw all 3 of them on this recent trip, and it's just incredible. That's what I love, like you see these people, and if it's a real friendship, you pick up right where you left off, and it was the same with everyone. It was wonderful. So, yeah, Dulcineo showed me around in this city outside of Portugal, and then Ruben and Petra, I actually stayed with them. So, really, really, really nice. Okay, so here's some pics, various pics from my travels. This is the Forbidden City in China, in Beijing. Here's the Great Wall. You can see the weather was perfect. This was also great. I went to Beijing during my Christmas break because I was stuck in China, right? So when I went there, of course, you're not going to see a lot of people when it's winter on the Great Wall. So there you can see very few people. So I got really, really lucky with that as well. So I've also been to Borneo. Does anybody recognize that guy with the long mustache in the back there on the left?
Yeah, Eric.
You guys know Eric Peterson? So Eric, a few years back, about 7 years ago, he messages me and he said, I got my passport. I want to go somewhere. Tell me where are we going? I'm coming to see us. I was like, yes, this is great. So at that time, I wanted to go to Borneo. I don't know if you guys have heard of Borneo, but if you've ever seen National Geographic and you've seen those monkeys with those big noses like this, that's Borneo, right? Anyway, so it was on my bucket list, and I told him, he's like, great. So this is us on, actually, we were going to see those monkeys on this. It was like we were going down this river here. In the middle is me in Myanmar. Some of you might know that as Burma. And then the right is also in Myanmar. The right is in Chinatown in the capital. And the one in the middle is a place called Bagan. There are thousands, see all those temples there? There's thousands of them littering the landscape. It's incredible. It's incredible. Unfortunately, right now, Myanmar is embroiled, is that the right word? They're embroiled in a civil war right now, so it's really tragic. The military took power back a few years ago, and it's been really brutal. But so yeah, I got lucky to catch. I was there in this like small window of 6 or 7 years when they were attempting democracy, but in the end, the military didn't let that happen. So. Anyway, but a magnificent country. Some of you have probably heard of Mandalay before. Mandalay, it's a city in Burma. Yeah. This is recently, the one on the left is in Spain, and the one in the middle is in Porto, Portugal, and the one on the right is in Sintra, up at this castle. That's where my friend Dulcineo that I was telling you about. That's where we were hanging out. So Croatia's one of my favorites. I would love to retire there. I call it Michigan on steroids because actually Zagreb, the capital, is also on the 45th parallel. So these are things what cities are on the 45th parallel? But Croatia, it's Michigan on steroids. It's on the same parallel, so it gets all the seasons, but they have mountains and they have the Adriatic Sea. And it's right across from Italy. So that's why it's on steroids. So the one on the right is Kirka National Park, really amazing. The one on the left is Dubrovnik. Does anybody watch Game of Thrones? Or have you heard of the show Game of Thrones? Yeah. So the one on the left, Dubrovnik, is King's Landing. It's like the capital of the kingdom in the show. That was really cool. My friend Mikey, who got me into the show, we went there together, and there were famous spots in the city where the show took place, so we were going to all these spots, hanging out. It was really, really nice. Bali, one of the most magnificent places in the world, of course. So Indonesia is one of my favorite countries. I would argue it's the most diverse country in the world. I might be wrong, but there's 17,000 islands and 300 languages, 300 ethnicities. So I think it's safe to say it's the most diverse country in the world. But everywhere you go, it's just incredible. These are the rice terraces in the center of Bali here. Another place in Indonesia is Java. So Eric Peterson came to see me, and we went to Borneo. Borneo is made up of 3 countries. We went to the part of Malaysia. So the following year, he said, "I'm coming back. Where are we going?" I said, "I want to go to Indonesia again." That's where we chose. This is Borobudur. This is the largest Buddhist temple in the world. You can't see anything here, but it's massive, massive, massive. And those things right there are about this tall and this wide. Those stupas there. And inside of each one of those is a Buddha. And there's maybe hundreds of those around the temple. It's massive. And Eric was really loving it because he's really into meditation and stuff. So he was loving this kind of stuff. Vietnam. So this is, where is this? Yeah, this is in Hanoi. Vietnam is one of my favorite countries. I love it. It's just incredible, and the food is amazing. The people are great. And of all the unique countries in Southeast Asia, they all are so unique, but there's just something about Vietnam. There's something special, and there's just something that sets it apart from all the others, even though they're all just incredible. Oh, I mixed those up. That should be one behind, but it doesn't matter. Here's another one in Indonesia. This is Lombok. So Eric and I were chilling here, having some food and drinks, and it was just a nice place. Here's Costa Rica. The one on the left is kind of like a typical dish. So looking at that makes me miss it. Cambodia. Yeah, you've probably been here, I assume, right? Yeah. So this is, it's probably, you might think it's kind of funny that I don't actually have something of Angkor Wat, right? But, so this is actually a temple called Ta Prohm, and it's in, so there's like, has anybody ever heard of Angkor Wat? So I think it's the largest religious structure in the world. But anyway, everyone lumps this into Angkor Wat. This is actually in the neighboring city called Angkor Thom, like right near it. But this is one of the most famous places because this tree, I think, is probably 600 years old or something. But have any of you ever seen the movie Tomb Raider? Tomb Raider. It's like this girl who's like an explorer. This is in the movie Tomb Raider. And then Laos. Laos is one of my favorite countries. I absolutely love it. It's I don't know. It's just completely magical. It's definitely a country that most people would never even think of, but it's in my top 5 for sure. And I've gone here. Does anyone know Matt Kowalski? Or Jeff Kowalski and Jeff's younger brother Matt, or Andrew Kowalski? So Matt Kowalski, we were there together. So, and then we went in 2017, and I just went back this past February. But yeah, just incredible. I mean, it's very low key. And then I just wanted to toss this in here. I love Hong Kong too, and Hong Kong food as well. So this is just a typical classic Hong Kong dish. They've got the Peking duck. Yeah, they've got Peking duck, and then some kind of like pork, like and some other kind of chicken. So that's a typical Hong Kong dish right there. All right, so I had mentioned that human connection is a little bit. Of course, as you travel, you're meeting people and all this kind of stuff. So I just want to talk for a minute about, how we're really all connected. That's like after time, there are these themes that pop up, and there are these themes that pop up, and one of them is really how we're all more connected than different, right? I mean, if I'm in a country in Southeast Asia, the cultures couldn't be more different, but you see all of those similarities. And that's, in my opinion, that's some of the most rewarding stuff about traveling. Like, I absolutely love this picture on the right. I love this picture on the right. So I was, on one Sunday, I was cruising around on my scooter up in the mountains with a friend, and we met this guy, and he was just so excited because he saw a couple foreigners, and he was super excited, couldn't speak not a word of English, and as you remember, my Chinese was not very good, but we made the connection. It kind of reminds me of another thing. A good friend of mine, Steve Schaefer, we were talking recently, he was in Tokyo, and one time, Steve, right? One time he was in Tokyo, and he hung out with a man, a Japanese businessman who spoke zero English. They could not communicate at all. They hung out with each other for 3 hours and just laughed and had an amazing time. That's human connection, and I just kind of want to make a point about how I don't know, I know the world's feels like it's always crazy, but it feels like it's getting pretty crazy. And I just, want us to remember that what connects us instead of what divides us, and like this guy and we sat there for 15 minutes. We had nothing to talk about, but he just wanted to be with us, and that's the thing too, is like people love that. He's like, wow, you're in my country, you're coming to see my stuff. They love that, I mean, it'd be the same thing if somebody said to you, hey, what's this? I heard about this thing called a pasty. What's a pasty? I mean, that's a Michigan cultural thing. You know what I mean? And you would love to teach people about that if they weren't from here, I would assume, Yeah.
What are you holding in your hand?
My helmet. My helmet, yeah. And then on the left, so I was talking about when I was in Laos with Matt Kowalski. So that's Matt Kowalski on the right, and then my friend Paul on the left. Matt and I lived with Paul in Montana for a while. So those are just some kids in Laos. So we got some scooters and we wanted to go on a little adventure, and we opened up the map and started looking around. We found this interesting cave called Cave of the Teeth. And it was very strange. And what we heard is that it used to be you get there and there's actual kind of like a door with like jail bars on it. And they said, like, the kids were all scared. I think they think it's haunted. I think the locals think it's haunted. They wouldn't walk near those with us. But what we heard is that they used to keep prisoners in there. But anyway, and you just look inside and it's just like a table and a bunch of teeth on a table. It's the weirdest thing ever. But these kids, we showed up, and these kids, they were like school kids, and they just got done from school. They were walking home. There's about 20 of them. They were just at the entrance, and we stopped, and they couldn't speak any English, but they ended up showing us where it was. We had to go through some cornfield and back into the jungle. There's no way we'd find it. So these kids took us back there. So again, human connection. They were just excited that we want to know about their world. You know what I mean? So that was a lot of fun. So on the left, that's me when I arrive in Turkey. And the girl next to me is a girl named Hilal. She's the wife of one of my best friends, Mikey. So I went to Turkey, and I arrived, super long flight. I arrived, I think, 8 in the morning. She came with her friend to pick me up, and they went home. And her mother, Ka, the one next to her in the middle, she was just slaving away all morning, making this massive breakfast just for me. It was incredible. And I showed up at 8:30, and it was just magnificent. You can see it's just massive, and it was perfect, and it was a proper Turkish breakfast, and I've come to absolutely love Turkish breakfast since then. Now the one on the right, I absolutely love this one. So I was recently in Bulgaria. I was in the capital of Bulgaria called Sofia, and I went to a traditional restaurant, and I'm sitting by myself, and the place is wide open, and people can sit anywhere, and these four guys come in, and they're going to sit over there, and then they say, oh, we want to sit over there, you know. One thing I'm trying to do these days is remember that, again, not to sound corny, but when one door closes, another one opens, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, man, these guys are sitting next to me. I wanted some privacy. But the door opened, and I made friends. I hung out with these guys for about 4 hours. We had quite a few adult beverages, and we were talking a lot. And the guy that I'm slapping five with, and the guy across from him, it's father and son. They're from Croatia, and the guy kind of in the middle there is from, I think he's from Switzerland, and the guy on the left is from Brazil. So once again, you know, just like people from 3 countries, it's so easy to make connections. But they were it's really surprising. When I travel, I like to be an ambassador for America and show the world that some Americans do know a little bit about the world, you know, and do know a little bit about geography. So these guys were really kind of blown away with kind of my attitude and my travel attitude and stuff. So we really got on really well. That was a lot of fun. So you can see, I mean, there's just a million opportunities to connect with people from different countries, and it's just, you know, I mean, it's one of the most rewarding things. Okay, so all right, so let me just talk about a few things here, and if we have some extra time, then we can go. So, excuse me, if we have some extra time, we can go through. I have kind of like extra slides if there's time. So here are some things I've discovered over my time. So in my experience, many people are most concerned with the happiness and health of themselves and the people they care about. This is like the one universal thing that I've found. People, and of course people want to be happy, but people just want health and happiness for their friends and themselves. That's all people care about. Like, most people care nothing about politics. Most people care nothing about that kind of stuff. They just want the people they love to be happy and healthy. That's it. That's like the most universal thing. And that's what I love, is that connects us, because we know we all want that same thing. But it doesn't matter if I'm in Croatia or Panama or Thailand. You see that everywhere. It's very heartening. Very heartening. And then, of course, you know, like I was saying, you know, many people are eager to introduce people to their worlds. They want to maybe invite them in. They want to offer them food. One thing that I find a lot is they want to show the local drink. So, I mean, every country has their own kind of special liquor. And wherever you go, if you're a foreigner, it doesn't matter. They're going to try to make you drink as much of that as possible. But it's wonderful. But it's just fun. It's a fun thing. They're laughing. They're like, ha ha, look at the foreigner. It's great. And if you can hold your own, then it's pretty cool. And then if you're respectful of the culture or the country you're in and attempt to learn at least some basic words, even hello and thank you, or even thank you, that is huge. Like, people will open up just on that, just on that. Yeah, you will see their face change if you just say one word. It's great. Language. So language, I'm really interested in language and pronunciation and ideas about, like, that we can't pronounce some things in Chinese because we don't have that sound in our language. Some people that speak Arabic might not be able to pronounce Russian or something like this. So again, if you travel, I would suggest learn at least a few basic words. I'm going to appreciate that. This is one thing that's easy to forget. English is actually a very difficult language. And I think the biggest difficulty is all the exceptions to these rules that we have. Most other languages are just, you know, I mean, I don't want to say most, but many languages are just like that. But English is difficult, so don't forget that. A lot of people can get frustrated, and especially, like, if you're not in an English-speaking country, like, try not to get frustrated, you know. Like, the thing you have to keep in mind is that the sounds that some people might not be able to pronounce. Like, for example, Thai. I put Thai as an example. One thing I noticed when I go to Thailand, is many, if not most, Thai people, they can't pronounce the S sound at the end of words. So I was staying in a place called Prince Palace Hotel, and they say Prince Palace. Oh, you're staying at Prince Palace. They can't say the S at the end. So there are things like that where they just, it might not be. So I don't know. I just know that sometimes Americans are just like, come on, why don't you speak English or something? It's like, it's really difficult. It's a really difficult language. And then this one is interesting. Pay attention to the importance of food in a language. Language and food are two of the most important expressions of culture and are often intertwined. You can learn a lot about a culture by observing how food is used in a language. That's one thing I thought was quite interesting. In China, I mean, food is everything. So there might be like a slang term that is fried rice is a slang term for something. So there's so much stuff, but you can really kind of understand about a cultural identity by the food in their language. It's really interesting. Okay, so I had a little, let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, good. So I had a little, I was telling you guys about Anthony Bourdain before, my hero, and there is one clip here where I think I just love to listen to him talk about traveling. He's just so like to the point and very matter of fact. And this one, the woman is asking him about what he's learned in his travels. You can't really hear the woman that's interviewing, you can't really hear what she's saying, but you can get the basic idea by what he's, by his response. So I'm going to click play. I hope there's not going to be an ad, but if there's an ad on YouTube, just bear with me. So,
the future of your business is here. With Wix, you get advanced AI capabilities.
So what have you learned from all your travels? What do you take away from this? What do you take away?
Be open to experience, be willing to try new things, don't have a rigid plan, accept random acts of hospitality without judgment or fear. Don't be afraid to wander, don't be afraid to eat a bad meal. You know, if you don't risk the bad meal, you'll never get the magical one. But I think most important, be humble, be grateful. Be aware of the fact that you are probably the stupidest person in the room, as far as you are the least prepared, least equipped person to know who's really in charge and what's really going on.
What have you learned about people from around the world?
About people.
I think maybe before I started traveling, I thought that the human race as a whole were, could and would turn on itself at any moment, venal, petty, cruel, arbitrary. And it's true that all of those things exist in this world, but I meet mostly pretty nice people doing the best they can, often under very, very difficult conditions. I met a lot of very nice people who've done very, very bad things that conflict with my deeply held conceptions of justice, or sexual equality, or acceptable practice, or religious views. A lot of gray areas in travel. But I think that on balance, the world is filled with people doing the best they can, who love their kids and, would like to, put on a clean shirt every morning and live their lives with a little dignity and have access to food and water, hope, just like everybody else.
Yeah, so I thought that, really kind of wraps it up nicely. And right there at the end is kind of that point of that universal truth that I was telling you, where he said, look, they're just doing their best. Everyone everywhere, just doing their best, and you just want to have a little dignity. You want to be able to provide for your family, you want to have food and water. So I think he kind of hit the nail on the head there. So it looks like we still do have about 25 minutes. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Or I did put together, yeah, Ken?
You talked just a little bit about the classes you taught, the STEM classes.
Oh yeah, sorry, I kind of talked about that all and didn't really talk about what I was doing in China. So I was in Taiwan, and actually it's an interesting story because this girl named Stephanie Baining that I went to high school with, she had moved to China and she was working at this school called Basis International School. And she found out I was in Taiwan, so she messaged me, she's like, man, you gotta come and work for us. So I was like, well, I'm close enough, so why don't I zip over there and check out the school and stuff like that. And I went there and I ended up getting the job. And they hired me as the engineering and technology teacher, which is funny. I'm like, really? Okay. Because before that, I was just teaching English language. I mean, I was teaching some kindergarten stuff and doing like some like science and math and phonics. I was doing like that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I was like, okay. The demo that my former boss saw from my science class, that's why he thought engineering would be a good fit, because the engineering class is like a STEAM class. Do you guys know STEAM or STEM? It's like it's a trend in education. It's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And these kind of like this kind of holistic approach to I don't know if that's the right word. This approach. It basically opens up people's minds because you know, of course, you got to use a little bit of science when you're doing engineering. So anyway, it was kind of that type of class. So so the units were basically like civil engineering, aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, and then coding and 3D design. Coding and 3D design was on iPads and laptops. So it was like hands-on, like, okay, we're learning about civil engineering. You guys need to build a bridge. You have straws and tape, and you have 20 minutes to do it, and the winner gets yada, yada. You know, so it's like building stuff. And then after a few years, my class transitioned to it was called technology and design then. And we kept the units for coding and 3D design, but we also added circuitry, and then like multimedia and productivity, like Microsoft and PowerPoint and video editing and stuff like that. Yeah.
You mentioned that this was first to fourth graders, right?
Oh yeah, sorry. So it was for grades 1 to 4, first to fourth graders. So once that happened, I got really lucky. My partner who I was working with is like a tech genius. So he kind of took me under his wing. I learned so much. And we built up the program together when we showed up. Like there was no curriculum. We had to do everything. So it was a lot of fun working with him and going through that process. And I love that stuff. I mean, it's challenging and sometimes it's insanely stressful. If you're alone and you have 22 7-year-old kids with laptops trying to learn how to insert an image to a Microsoft Word document, and you're alone, it can be really stressful because they try and then they try once and that's it, and it's teacher, so that kind of stuff. But it's crazy and stressful, but it was so rewarding, and I'm really proud of the work that I did with my partner and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like not necessarily in a nutshell, but that's like a little background about what I was doing there. So that was a lot of fun working with the laptops and all the technology. Yeah.
Couple questions. Do the kids speak English?
Yes. So we had a very strict English speaking policy at that school, where they could only speak at recess and lunch, and everywhere else they had to speak English, and there was like a punishment system and stuff like that. But so the school I was at, there are like 10 schools, I think, in the system, in the network in China. Basis has like 10 schools. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. What was I just talking about, Deej? I'm just like going ahead of myself.
Second part of that question is how much, if the kids start, let's say at kindergarten or first grade, do they go all the way?
Oh yeah. So that school is pre-K to grade 12.
And how much does it cost a year?
Oh, it's like $45K a year. It's insane. Yeah, like a 7-year-old kid, his parents are paying $45,000 a year. It's insane. And of course, a lot of those families have 3 kids, but it's like super wealthy people, But the kids were really good. Like 98% of those kids were really good, smart for the most part, very respectful, and it was nice. Yeah.
When Jamie was teaching in Beijing,
Uh-huh.
it was a class where they knew English, they were bilingual. The parents paid, and he said that all of them were coming to the United States to go to college.
Yeah, that's,
All like,
they're preparing them basically only for that. You're right. So that's a good point. That's what it is, my school, the reason, it's essentially, so Shenzhen, the city where I was living, there's a lot of money there. Shenzhen is the tech capital of China, so it's a lot of money there. And they, it doesn't matter what they, I mean, some of them are billionaires. It doesn't matter if they pay that for them, because some of their kids might be in there for 8 years, times 3 kids, times $45,000, so. Yeah.
Do the kids have cell phones like they do in the United States?
Some do, but of course there's like a strict policy about that where they couldn't have it in class. None of my students did because my students were so young. The 4th grade was the oldest student grade.
Your experience with the health system?
The health system, okay, so Taiwan is incredible. China, partly incredible, partly not. So Taiwan, and I don't know if I can be totally accurate when I say this, but they have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. It's universal, and it's crazy. I mean, you can get your teeth cleaned for $2. It's so cheap. So their healthcare system is great. One little thing about that is by doing that, of course, there might be like kind of too many doctors. So you might get maybe some clinics that are not as, so you get some of, like that, maybe kind of flooding the market. But in general, it's really good in Taiwan. In China, so with my school, I had really good insurance. That's the part I was talking about that was good. So I needed to get knee surgery. And I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. And I didn't pay a dime. It was incredible. So that was good, but then this was interesting. So when I was in China, I actually got bit by a bamboo pit viper, a poisonous snake on a mountain. I got bit on my foot, so I had to go. So this is a story about the good side of Chinese medical stuff, and so. When they had to take me to a special hospital that had like anti-venom and specialized in snake bites. So they took me there, and that place, I didn't see, I had to go there 4 times. I didn't see anyone ever. It was totally, it was weird, it was strange. It was, and any public hospital in China, I would try to avoid. I would rather not go there if I didn't have to. Not terrible, but we're America. We just have our standards are so high for everything, like cleanliness and all that kind of stuff, where for them, they're just like, whatever. Who cares if someone doesn't clean the hospital every day? So Taiwan has incredible stuff. China has good stuff, I guess, if you have good health insurance. So.
But you overcame the snake bite.
Yeah. It was, it was interesting. Any other questions? Yeah.
You were in China during the one-child policy, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, I think when did they stop the one China policy? I think that might have been right before I moved to China, because that was probably about 6 or 7 years ago.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Were you out there with children that were raised under the one-child policy?
No. Yeah, they didn't know anything, but yeah, well, they shot themselves in the foot with the one China policy. Now they're having massive population problems, and now they're paying couples to have 3 kids or more. So they were overpopulated, changed it to the one-child policy for 35 years. So now I don't know how it would look on a chart, but I think it's like this. It would be like, so now essentially it's like so many old people. There's no younger generation. So they shot themselves in the foot, and now they're basically like, they're going to lose their edge because they won't have the workforce. And that's for another day. We could talk about that kind of stuff. Any other questions?
You think you'd write a book Write a book about all your.
I do want to write a book. I have an idea for a book, so hopefully someday.
Really? Just one idea?
Yeah, just one. Just one. It's gonna be a really short book. Really short book. All right, so I put together some extra slides here, guys, with just kind of like some random things. So let's just take a look. Okay, so here we go. So here's some travel facts. So I've been to 33 countries. China, I've been to 26 cities and towns and 11 provinces because I was there during COVID for 3 years and I had 3.5 months paid vacation every year. So like I need to go somewhere. So I went all over China. Vietnam, Laos, Croatia, Portugal, and Greece, I would say, are my favorite countries. Hey, there you go, Peking duck. Peking duck is the first one. Or Dongbei food. Dongbei means northeast. That's the food up where Beijing is. Oh man, I forgot to put a picture of the Galician octopus. So I love octopus. I know some of you might not. I know my mom is probably squirming over there, but this Galician octopus, it was just incredible. Beef Iskandar from this Turkish food, I love it a lot. Sushi, I'm a huge sushi fan. Gallo pinto is the typical rice and beans dish that they have every day in Costa Rica. And I don't know if you remember that thing, that Dan Bing, that egg pancake that I showed you in Taiwan. It's one of my favorites. Favorite music, Fado in Portugal. Fado is kind of like a music style about longing for Portugal. They're on the sea, so they have a lot of sailors. So it's kind of like the family's longing for like the husband and father to come back. So it's this really heartfelt, beautiful, beautiful music. This gamelan in Indonesia, they have like kind of special percussion. Every time I hear it or go to Indonesia, it instantly takes me back to Indonesia. This Demotiko in Greece, it's kind of like a traditional Greek music. And actually, I just found out recently that they've been playing that music since Byzantine times, that's over 2,000 years ago, I think, right? So when I travel, I look for authentic restaurants and hopefully with music as well. And I found this incredible place in Athens. And there's just something about it, that feeling when you're seeing that traditional real life stuff. There's just something about it. And reggae is one of my favorite kind of music from Jamaica. So here are the countries that I've visited. North America, Canada, Costa Rica, Panama, and Jamaica. In Asia, Taiwan, China, Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Dubai, and Turkey. And then a lot of these were just from the trip recently. So Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech, Croatia. Montenegro is really incredible, by the way. Albania, Macedonia, Bulgaria, Holland, Vatican City. Okay, some travel suggestions for you. So this one, I live by this. Allow things to happen. So be open and not so rigid. One of my good friends, he's well-traveled, but everything is always so rigid. I mean, he types it all up and everything. And me, I'm just like, I guess I'm getting up at 10:30 today, okay. And then this is another one. A lot of times everyone thinks about where you're going, but a lot of times the journey is what it's all about. That's where the magic really happens. So remember, it's often not about the destination, but about the journey. This is important too. Plans fall through. This happens a lot. Be open to spontaneity and adaptability. Many of my best travel experiences were unplanned. It's a personal thing. This is one thing that I've been kind of doing more recently. Taking time to reflect. Before you go, of course, you have some expectations. A lot of times you might not meet those. Maybe you will and exceed the expectations. But it's always good to think about it, and think about yourself and where you are at in your life and why you might need to travel and it might just be like, just for pleasure. It might be a thing where like you need to let your mind rest, or it could, but anyway, so when you're traveling, sometimes there are profound realizations or epiphanies that you'll experience and embrace what travel can teach you. So like for me, one thing that I realized recently, I'm so happy about this time off because I can go out and I'm trying to take this time to really be grateful and live in the now and appreciate everything now. Something that's not always easy to do, but fortunately I've had some time to try to practice this more. And one of these realizations, it dawned on me a couple of days ago. You guys might laugh, but for me, I want to go everywhere else and find the cultural experiences. And you forget about your culture here. Not just Michigan culture, but Alpena culture, like the pasty thing, and maybe it's other place in the Midwest, but that's a Michigan thing, So I don't want to say I'm chasing the other things because I accept and embrace those things everywhere, but I'm kind of going out seeking these cultural experiences. And yesterday, where was it? I think, I was shoveling the driveway at my mom and dad's place the other day. And I had one of these realizations, and I was like, all of this cultural stuff that I'm looking for, like, this is it. Like shoveling snow in Michigan in the winter, that's a cultural thing, and that was kind of like, like it's here, like, and it was just, so I'm just trying to like embrace all these simple things, and like that gave me a lot of joy, just shoveling. I know it sounds strange to you guys, because remember, I've been away from snow for a long time, so I know you guys are over it, but like that's a thing, and I really got a lot of pleasure out of shoveling of all things. Okay, so travel tips. This is a big one. I assume most people would do this, but definitely find out if you need a visa if you go somewhere. You don't want to travel far and then show up and you don't have a visa. I put this U.S. passport in parentheses because the U.S. passport is, I don't know if it's I don't want to say best, but the passport that has the most access to countries. So I think U.S. has well over 100, maybe 150, but just if you do travel, make sure that if you need a visa, do your own research, of course, learn a little bit about the culture, language, food, geography, stuff like that. This is a big one. Always get an aisle seat on long flights. So when I moved to Taiwan, my last leg was San Francisco to Taipei. It was a 14-hour flight. The first time I'd ever been on a flight that long. And I was like, I want to get a window seat. Great. The flight took off at 11:30 p.m. I couldn't see anything. So stupid. I got a window seat. And then next to me is this little Vietnamese girl, and next to her is this old Taiwanese man who like could barely move. His 50-year-old son is there helping him. So he's on the end, so I don't want to make the old guy get up. I got up 2 times out of the 14-hour flight. So, and like to avoid jet lag and stuff, you want to get up and move around and, like do some of this ankle stuff. So if you can, get an aisle seat. Often you have to pay for it, but it's worth it. Okay, so what to look for in a restaurant or a food stall, at least in East Asia. So I look for the short plastic stools. So I don't want any nice table and chairs. I want the cheap stuff. And then it's the real deal. Of course, if you see some place with long lines, that's a sign that it's really good. And then if there are lots of locals, and if they have the authentic local dishes. In the local authentic restaurants, I can't stress that enough. At least for me, I mean, I just feel like it's a magical experience every time I do that. I've seen so much good music and experienced so much good stuff. We're lucky today. Sorry, on to the next thing. We're lucky today. We have the translation apps. So any one of you could go to China, and if you have Google Translate or something else, you can do that. So we don't need to live in fear anymore of the language gap. And then the last one is consult Anthony Bourdain's body of work and his worldview. So he had a show called Parts Unknown, and before that his show was called No Reservations. And they're just incredible. He has a really nice worldview. He's kind of a little cynical sometimes, but he's real and he'll say it directly. But he's also like, to watch how humble he is when he travels it's really interesting to watch. You know, he said that in the video you saw where he says, be humble, you know, be grateful, you know. Let's see. Okay, so in conclusion, so travel challenges you to adapt and get out of your comfort zone, which promotes personal growth. So I would recommend that anyone travel when they can. I mean, even if you've never left Alpena, if you just go to Posen, that's traveling, that's going somewhere. I'm serious though, just to go somewhere, just to get different scenery, if nothing else. Okay, and then also we talked a little bit about human connection, and I just want you to remember, maybe like you can think about this kind of like talk that we've been having here about how, you know, really when you travel, you see a lot of more of what connects us than what divides us. So just try to remember that, because you just never know. Okay, and then be open and be willing to make mistakes. That's a huge one, especially with language learning, you have to. And be respectful of the culture. So, okay, so thank you for listening. I do want to give a special thanks to Florence and Marcia, and I don't know if Matt is okay. Anyway, so Matt and Lauren as well. I just want to say thanks, Matt. So Matt and Lauren as well. I do think I have a few more slides of some of the stuff from my Europe trip. We still have, I think, 2 minutes, right? I was going to try to crank out one from all the countries that I went to recently, but I didn't really have time. So here's just a couple of pictures from Portugal. I was blown away by how incredible Lisbon is. Lisbon is one of my favorite cities anywhere. So they have all of this kind of mosaic, is that what we call it? Just like mosaic tile work down here in the plaza. And these trolleys are everywhere. So one thing in Europe, it's just like trolleys, trains, buses, it's so easy to get around, it's amazing. And then here, so the pictures on the right and the left are from a city called Porto. And when I arrived there were forest fires nearby. So it made a nice little effect on the sunset, as you can see. And then right there in the middle, that place, I forget the name of the place, but that's also in Portugal. My friend Dulcineo, the guy from Portugal that got locked out of China during COVID, he took me there. He's from there. Another interesting thing about this picture in the middle, before I went on my trip, my dad and I were watching TV, I think National Geographic or something, and we saw this thing. And I said, Dad, I'm gonna go to that place when I go to Portugal. And I messaged my mom and said, tell Dad I'm going to that place. Yeah. And then Spain. So on the right, this is in Mallorca, where my friend Ruben lives. And then on the left, this was this amazing mountain town called Valdemosa. And it's just like, just way up there, and it just couldn't be more beautiful. This just blew my mind. So the pictures on the left and on the right are from a flamenco show. I went to see an incredible flamenco show. Really, lots and lots of fun. And the picture in the middle, that's the Sagrada Familia. It's the most famous piece of architecture in Barcelona. And that place, I mean, you can't, it's so huge and magnificent, and there's so much going on. You can't, I mean, taking this picture from the front doesn't do it any justice. I mean, it's almost as wide on the sides. It's massive. Here's another travel tip as well. So while I was traveling in Europe, everything was kind of spontaneous. I just got a one-way to Lisbon, and it's quite spontaneous after. By doing that, I missed out on some important things by not reserving things. So that Sagrada Familia was reserved for like a month and a half after I was there. So if you ever go to Barcelona, make a reservation. If you go to Amsterdam and you want to go to Anne Frank House, make a reservation. I missed that because it's the most popular thing in Amsterdam. So That's another thing too. If you travel and you want to see something, see if you need a reservation, because I missed out on a couple things. But that's why you do that. You learn, right? And then this is Bulgaria. This is in Sofia. I absolutely loved Sofia. So the one on the left is, I forget the name of it's the cathedral of, I think, like Saint Alexander or something. But anyway, I was there on a full moon and it just happened to be like a perfect opportunity. And you can see like the kind of like the gold color on the top of the dome. And it's too bad I didn't actually put a full size one. But if you're interested, so the city is Sofia, Sofia, maybe just like Sofia. If you say Sofia Cathedral on Google or something, it will probably bring this up. It's incredible. It's a huge, amazing one. The middle one is just kind of like a nice park where I was chilling one day. And then the one on the right is really interesting. There's a mosque in the background. And all of the stonework in the foreground, it's a former Roman colony there. So that's all from ancient Rome. And that was pretty crazy. Like in the subway station right there, you walk onto the subway station and there's just like chunks of Roman houses in the subway station. It's amazing. But yeah, Sofia blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. Beautiful city. So anyway, I think that's it.